How is it possible that two little pieces like this can make such a difference? What's up, everybody? Thank you and welcome back to my video. Today I want to talk a little bit about my personal experience of what happened when I chopped my tail wing on my foil down. What did I learn? How did I do it? It's actually kind of like a tricky thing. And who wants to chop something down that you just paid $200 for? Why would I saw into something like this? People were telling me, you must do it. It's so much better. Do it. And I'm like, you know, this is expensive. But I did it, and it kind of cost me a little bit of an experience, and I will talk about that. And then we're going to go a little bit into my wing special, because evidently foiling and winging sometimes require a little bit of a different setup, and I'm still just learning so much. But let's do first things first. All right, so after all these words about chopping down my tail wing, I had one of these, and they have that line here where it says you can chop it down from a 332 centimeters down to a teensy little one of 212. And I'm like, whoa, man, am I gonna cut into this? I don't really want to. I gotta make this right the first time. So tip number one is, when you do this, I had one of those jigsaws, and I use a blade that is made for metal. So with very, very thin razor blade, or very, very thin saw teeth here, because a bigger blade for, or bigger teeth for wood, you risk like that this thing is like tearing. So I put it in here, and then what I did is I did not go all the way down to this line. I left plenty room above this line. I didn't even go straight with it. And after I was done with this, I used my corner cat here, and I started slowly but surely sanding my way to that line. First with a rough one, a finer, and at the end I even used a little polished one. And I went all the way down to that line, and as you can see, the little scissor from the line is still there on both sides. Here a little less, here a little more. So I made sure that this thing's got to be darn symmetrical, so I'm not making a mistake. But then why did I end up with another one? Why do I have two now? And that is the story. And I kept these two pieces because it's not a whole lot. You can just add those here. It's not a whole lot, but it made such a difference to me that I felt forced to go ahead and buy myself another one of the bigger one. Because there is one thing, and I'm going to tell you this in a minute when I'm sat down again, and we're going to talk about it. All right. So since I'm mainly used to learn how to foil prone surfing, after a while everybody goes to me and say, like, you should chop this wing down. But I also use the same setup that I have and teach myself on how to wing. Now, the big awakening was when I used this tail wing without the stabilizers on the side, or very, very minimal, and I went winging. And I was already kind of like intermediate winger, not really good, but I kind of like, you know, beginner stage 2, I want to say. I can stay upwind and all of that, and switch side, switch foot and everything, no problem. Toe side still a little struggling. But anyway, the upwind performance with the chopped down wing was like, wow. I was really astounded on how much harder it was to stay upwind with this instead of this. I was really astounded. It's the same thing, the stability on when I'm trying to learn how to jibe without going in the water every time. This one was a whole lot looser. So after 2 or 3 sessions, I saw myself forced to go ahead and order myself another tail wing. So now I use this one exclusively to wing foil, because it is just that much stable. And this is just these two little pieces. This is just these two little pieces that make such a difference. I'm still kind of amazed with it. Now if I go surfing, prone surf, foiling, I use this one. And this one, I don't need it that much anymore because I can handle surfing down a wave and doing turns much better. So, of course, the goal was to begin with that I'm going to have only this tail wing, and then I can use that for wing foiling in waves. But I just had to realize I am nowhere near of doing that, so I had to go back to something wider and more stable like this. So that is something that I wish that I have known before, because I think it would have saved myself the money and continued to even prone foil, wave foil with this, and then just not do that. But with this, I had to go back to this. Now I got another guy here, and I'm wondering, you know, what happens later on? Maybe this guy here. Should I cut this guy down too? You know, it's considerably bigger than this one. Look. See that? It's quite a bigger one, and I'm thinking like, well, maybe, you know, it'd be more fun to give it a cut somewhere, but how would I do that? They don't have a line here. I don't find much companies that have lines where you can chop down a wing, and I don't even know if they're meant to chop, or at least in most cases. But I think if I were to chop down this, I probably would somehow take a pen, make a line, and then try to go with the saw as close to the line as possible, so I have an exact piece, a replica of what I cut, and then maybe put it on the other side and then cut it there. Or somehow also measure these things, or maybe even better, do some sort of a cardboard template so you make this thing exactly symmetrical. But I'm not quite there yet, and this whole thing with all these wings and foils, again, it is something that I have never found myself in a sport where I got lost in details so much. I've been a surfer for 26 years, and I just surf, jump on a wave and surf. I never really looked into different fins, how people can lose themselves in the difference of fins. To me, it was never really something that I felt inclined to getting into. Sure, I can tell the difference between a thruster and a quad, of course, or a twin fin. Those things are obvious, but then different fins, I mean, it's the same thing. You can have 1,000 different combinations and 1,000 different nuances of fin changes, and I feel a little bit the same thing is going on, or even more, with foiling. And I'm really wondering, and that is something that maybe you guys can help me out with, I'm really wondering how much of a difference does it make. In here it made a huge difference, but you see other things where I'm really wondering, thinking about speed. Things really start to matter when the faster things go, and we know that, like in physics, like with space travel, for example, if an object re-enters the atmosphere, it comes at such a big speed that even the air becomes such a friction, blah blah blah. You guys know all of that. So I'm really wondering, we're traveling with a foil probably, I don't know, we want to say on a good day, you know, maybe 15-20 miles an hour, I want to say, maybe on a kite and on a wing a little more. But are those speeds enough to really show huge differences in small changes of your setup? In this case it did, but I think it's quite, that wing almost looks like completely different, like this, like the whole thing changed. This one looks fatter, this one looks more slim, high, the aspect ratio changed, of course, and everything. So they almost look like two different wings, even though I just took the tips off. So, and in winging, it is the same thing. And if you haven't seen my latest magazine, here I start winging on an SUP. I don't even try to go on a foil and deal with that yet. So same thing with wings. We see 1,000 wings from each sorts of different companies, and I'm really wondering where and what are the differences if you have a 4 meter from this company and a 4 meter from another company. I don't know that yet, but I'm thinking I want to bring somebody in the future and find somebody that is an expert in this. I'm not an expert. I have still so much to learn, but I like to share my experience along the way because I think it's kind of interesting, and I enjoy also when other people are doing this, when they come from like the point of view is like, hey, I'm not a pro, I'm learning this, and you can actually kind of learn along with them and learn from their mistakes and learn what they've seen and what they've done. And that's what I've seen. Although it's super cool to watch all the videos from the pros and you see the potential that's there, but most of us are not the pros. Most of us are just guys that are doing it for fun and have ambitions to learn more, and that's what this is for. And that's why I'm continuing in print and on video with my experience in winging and foiling. And as you can see here in my little sequence going from up to donkey, I learned this on a SUP, and lately we've seen all these videos coming out, or not all these, but a few videos coming out, particularly the one with Kai Lenny, doing the one on a huge wing and a strapped surfboard. And then there was another one coming from South Africa, from Nathan Van Hoeren, where he did the same, and I think that's actually kind of cool. I've seen another one where the guy is doing it with a skimboard somewhere in Europe on a strong onshore wind, and he's in this deep water, and he's chipping along the tiny little shore break waves with a skimboard. So that is something we must not forget, that with the wind wing in itself, there is so much potential, and it can be applied to so much more than just this. So I'm stoked to continue with this. And again, I'm going to try to find somebody here on Maui that can explain me this a little better and can talk a little bit more about stabilizers and tail wings and how can be interchanged. Because in fact, I just noticed these two guys have the same holes. So I'm going to go check and see if I maybe can change those out, even though they're from two different companies, but the holes are exactly the same. So we're gonna go check that out. Hopefully you guys have something to say. Let me know what you think. Let me know where you are with your wing foil SUP experiments. How is it going for you? And we can get a great conversation started. And hopefully by next week I'll have somebody in here that can give us a little insight on those little angles and tips and nooks and crannies on all of that. I'm on the lookout. If you know somebody, send them my way.